Hi guys, Mrs. Berry here. Hey, we're going to start day 6, which is where we're going to write trig functions given the key features in text. So this is different. You won't have a graph to look at. They're going to give you the data in text form, and you're going to translate it to an equation. Your homework today will be on deltamath.com. So let's go ahead and review what we already know, or we've learned in the last few videos. We have the equations of the form, if it's a sine curve, it's a sine bx plus d. The parentheses are important. If it's a cosine graph, it's a cosine bx plus d. Now, this is the order in which I want you to fill out the graphs, so use this guide as the order. So the first thing you need to do is find the y value of the midline, and that's going to go in to spot D in either equation. Okay? The next thing you're going to need to do is find the amplitude. The amplitude is when you find that midline and you count the distance from the midline to the maximum of the graph and the midline to the minimum of the graph to check. That amplitude value goes in for part A in either equation. And what's changing now, and what the more complicated part of this, is when we get down to the frequency, which is the B value, okay? There are two things that could happen when you get to the frequency, okay? We didn't do this one yet. We learned about it, but we're going to learn how to use it in the equations. There's two things that can happen here. The first thing is they can straight up give you the frequency, okay? If they say frequency, that's the number you're going to use in the equation. If they say the word period, you are going to have to calculate the frequency based on this formula. You're going to take 2 pi and divide it by whatever period value they give you, okay? So that's what we're doing today. So let's go right into example 1. You're going to write a cosine function, and this is what Delta Math looks like right here. I print screen these from Delta Math, so if you take good notes, you might even get a few free answers if you look back. But you're going to write a cosine value, or cosine function that has a midline of 2, amplitude 5, and a frequency of 4 pi. And the answer is in this form. If you need to type pi, here is where you would click to use pi in your answer if you need it, okay? That's something that's very important. It's right there. So either way, they're telling me it's a cosine function, right? So my function is going to look like this. Y equals A times cosine, parentheses are important, parenthesis B times X, close your parentheses, plus D. All right? So let's go find A, B, and D in this text. The midline is 2. Well, the midline up above is your D value. Amplitude is 5, that's your A value. And a frequency of 4 pi. So they told you it's the frequency, so it's your B value. So all we have to do is put those A, B, and D into our equation. So A, here's the equation button. A was 5. Cosine, parentheses, B is 4 pi. So you would type 4 and then hit pi over here and use everything else on your keyboard. D is 2, and it's a plus 2. And you would submit your answer and get that correct. Let's do another one. In example 2, they said write a sine function. So that's important because sine would look like this. A sine, parentheses, B x plus D. So now we need to find A, B, and D to put in this equation. So amplitude is 4, that's your A value. Midline of 5, that's your D value. And it says here it's a period of 1/2, okay? When we get the period, let's go back up to their notes. We have to calculate the frequency or B value and do 2 pi divided by the period that they give you. So in order to calculate my B value here, B is 2 pi divided whatever period they give me. Okay? So to get B, I'm going to do 2 pi, and they told me the period was 1/2. So that's 2 pi divided by the fraction 1/2. So let's go over what happens when you need to divide, you have a fraction inside a fraction, okay? So the B value would be, you take the numerator and keep it the same, but I'm going to put it over 1. So it'd be 2 pi over 1, that's keep. change from division to multiplication, and flip the denominator. So instead of 1 over 2, it'd be 2 over 1. Okay? You keep the numerator, change from division to multiplication, and flip the denominator. And that's how we deal with these fractions. So the b value, I have to do this. So 2 pi times 2, just multiply 2 times 2, and that's 4, and keep the pi and put it over 1. That simplifies to just 4 pi. You don't need to do the over 1 part. So my b value is 4 pi, and I had to do a calculation for it. Okay? B is 4 pi. So let's plug in these values into the equation. A was 4, sine, parentheses, B is 4 pi, so I would have to type 4 and then hit this pi button right here. And then don't forget the x. And then D was 5. And you hit submit and you'd get that right. All right, that's what we're doing today. Let's do a couple more. All right, on the next page, we have write a sine function. So once I see the word sine, I know that it's going to be of the form y equals a sine bx plus d, okay? And it has an amplitude of 4, that's my a midline of 5, that's my d, and a period, so they gave you the period this time, of 8 pi over 3. So I have to take that to get my b value. I take 2 pi and divide by whatever period they gave me. They gave me 8 pi over 3. Okay? So this is going to be a keep, change, flip. So I'm going to put the 2 pi over 1. So b would be 2 pi over 1 times, and then flip this denominator. So it'd be 3 over 8 pi. And this fraction simplifies some. The pi's cancel, and 2 and 8 have a common factor of 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Then I come back and I multiply across the numerators and multiply across the denominators. So b would be equal to 1 times 3 is 3, and 1 times 4 is 4. So my b value is a fraction. All right, let's fill it in. So a was 4 from up here, sine, parenthesis, b is 3 over 4, x, plus my d value of 5. And that's that. Let's do one more together, and then I'll have you try a couple. So they say write a sine function, so I know it's going to be y equals a sine bx plus d. Has an amplitude of 3, that's my a value, a midline of 2, that's my d value, and a frequency of 3 pi over 2. So I can go right to the b value here. There's no extra calculation because they said frequency. So let's fill it in. A is 3, sine, b is 3 pi over 2, x plus 2. Right? All right, so I'm going to have you guys pause the video and try these two, and then restart the video, and I'll go over them. Just make sure you're all set, and your homework will be on Delta Math. So go ahead and pause the video now and try these two, and then start the video to see if you got them right. All right, you should have been able to work on these. So the first one is a cosine, so I know it's going to be y equals a cosine bx plus d. Amplitude of 2, that's a, midline 3, that's d, and it says frequency of 1/4, so I can go right to the b value. So this is going to be 2 cosine 1 over 4x plus 3. All right. The last one here for you to try was the sine. So this is a sine, so it would be y equals a sine bx plus d. Midline of 4, so they changed the order here. So the midline is 4, that's my d value. Amplitude of 3, that's my a value. And it says period here, so I'm going to have to do that extra calculation. The period is 6 pi. To get my b value, I take 2 pi and I divide whatever they gave me for the period, 6 over 5. Okay, so put the 2 pi in the numerator over 1. So I have a fraction divided by a fraction. Keep the top, 2 pi over 1. Change from division to multiplication, and flip the denominator. So instead of 6 over 5, it's 5 over 6. And now I'm multiplying two fractions together to get my b value. So 2 pi times 5, just multiply the numbers. 2 times 5, 10 pi, keep the pi, and 1 times 6 is 6. And we end up with 10 pi over 6. That reduces. 2 goes into 10 5 times, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. So our final answer here would be b equals 5 pi over 3. Whoops. All right, so you have a little calculation there. Let's fill it in. A was 3, sine. B is 5 pi over 3, x. And the d value here is 4. And that's that. So you're going to have 6 or 8 of these to do on deltamath.com. And contact me if you're having any trouble. We can Zoom or even FaceTime, whatever it takes to get you all set. I'm here to help you. So this is your last video for the week. I hope you enjoy it. Have a good weekend.